welcome to another Leica review. Today we are talking about this very special lens, Canon 50mm 0.95. It's called a TV lens. It was produced back in the 70s, early 70s especially. And this lens is a very particular look, and for that special look it has been often dubbed as a dream lens. And there's an article that I wrote and a video that's available that describes why this lens was manufactured. And beyond that, I wanted to get into the field tests, see how this lens performed in actual practice. See, one of the most difficult and most challenging situations for a lens is in low light. And low light produces the most important characteristics of a film look if you use it with a monochrome. And that is one of the reasons I wanted to use this lens with a monochrome. And what we did is we took this lens out to a field test, and in that field test I photographed various life sculptures. In the life sculptures I wanted to see how it would react and how it would perform with the widest apertures, and at times I wanted to test it at apertures at 4, at 5.6 to see if it would still render images as beautiful as it does at 0.95. Of course, the sharpness increases as we turn the aperture to f4 or f5.6, but at 0.95 we wanted to see how it would perform. First things I noticed off the bat when I went out onto the field is the fact that this lens was very compact. It was very nice to hold, and it balanced beautifully on the camera. And secondly, what I noticed is that as I took these photographs, I noticed that there was a depth of field that appeared when I use it at widest apertures. Especially in some of the photographs, you will see that the background adds an element of beauty to the forefront, which is the subject. And these life sculptures, as they were presented, were particularly beautiful, and you could see the 3D effect that these lenses had with when we use this Canon lens. Of course, this is not a native lens, but at one period of time, Canon produced a rangefinder type of lenses, and this one was particularly designed for rangefinder 7. Which was one of their lines, and it was of course discontinued for DSLR type of lens cameras, but this lens was particularly adapted to be used on the Leica M, and currently they don't have any lenses that are made for that purpose. If you do find this lens, you will have to have it adapted and with the special changes of the mount. And that takes a very special skill, and I would suggest that if you do find this lens online or anywhere else, that you find a clean copy, because not all lenses of this type perform the same. Especially there's a confusion between the Canon lens and the TV lens. This lens was produced in 5 versions, and one of those versions is the TV lens, and that's the one that we are looking for, and that's the one that gives the most beautiful bokeh characteristics. So let's continue on to look at these photographs. The first photograph we have here is this picture of this dragon. And the dragon, as you can see, it comes alive, and you can see the gradation of tonalities on this dragon's face. And in the background that there's another sculpture, but that sculpture is almost blurred out, giving a perspective. And notice the way the head pops out of the image and gives this 3-dimensionality. And if you notice the way the ears are, there's a separation between the front, the eyes, and the nose, and the back where the ears are. And this adds an element of uniqueness and quality. Notice that the background has almost been wiped away because of the darkness, and that also creates the focus point for this photograph. Next one, we have these panda families. As you will see that the panda families sit in front of these bamboo trees. Now, what is interesting about this photograph is that the bamboo trees in the background are almost a little bit more out of focus, which creates the separation between the panda family and the background. And notice the way the central figure, the center of this lens becomes very critical here, because you see the sharpness of these two smaller pandas, and then as you move to the sides and the back, that the bokeh starts to add in. One other important characteristic is to look at the ground where the light bounces off from these light sculptures, and you can see the texture on the ground, and that also adds an element of beauty to this photograph, and it's one of the reasons why this lens performs so well under low light situations. Here we have the family, of course. One of them is playing a drum, and it looks like a native of the Chinese tradition, or maybe Southeast Asia. You can see a yak on the left, and this in particular is something that is quite striking, because you can see that the image composition reveals how the light qualities affect the image sensor, because you'll see that there is a kind of, if you focus in, you'll see that there is a little bit of noise, and that noise adds a slight element of grain, which we have from the look of film, and that of course is one of the beautiful characteristics of using a CCD type sensor. And then we have this other photograph. You can see the dragon center of the pool. There is some other sculptures onto the left and the right which support the central subject, but what is interesting is in the background. The background, which is very dimly lit, you can see the Chinese building in the back, and then the trees illuminated by the sculptures, and this would be almost impossible to capture even for the eyesight. Here, this lens that wide open was able to capture that, and if you notice it, things are in focus as we focus somewhere between 10 meters to infinity, and that adds a beautiful contrast to this photograph. And also notice the gradations of tonalities between the tree branches and all the way down to the water. And the water, as you can see, it's not a long exposure shot. You can see the ripples on the water, and that is one of the beautiful aspects of using a wide aperture photography. You can use faster speeds and you don't need a tripod. This photograph is one that I particularly like. You can see it again in the background, the Chinese building, somebody going up the stairs, and they are clearly in focus, but on the foreground you can see these sculptures are beautifully lit up, and you can see the clarity, the beauty, and the reflection of the surface of the pool, and that adds a characteristic of artistic element to it, which I kind of like with using these exotic lenses. And then next one, we have this, probably a farmer or a young child on top of a yak, which is a kind of a cow from the Southeast Asia, and you will notice that the cow's coloration is very different than the figure on top, and that of course creates a change in gradation tonalities between the grays and the darker shades. The background, which as a characteristics is a tree. You can see that it's not in isolation, it's not a cutout figure, but it is actually one that protrudes as a three-dimensional photograph, as the background sets stage, and the forefront we see the face of the yak in focus, and the central figure, which is the child or the farmer, also in focus. And I like this photograph for that particular purpose. Now this is a reflection of there was a projection on one of these oriental type houses, and you can see the tree branches, the lights, and I wanted to particularly put this one in because it seems like almost a surreal aspect of how the light and the gradational tones were captured by the CCD sensor on the monochrome, and how Canon lens was able to perform so well. Now the only way to achieve this kind of a look is to make sure that your sensor is able to process the quality of the lens that this image comes from, because if you use a cheaper lens you will not be able to get it. In fact, most of the lenses will not be as fast to be able to capture image handheld at this aperture. Now here we have another figure. This is a dragon, and in the background we see the Chinese writings, a wall that adds an element of beauty to it, and you can see the three-dimensionality of this photograph. And in the foreground you'll see this tree branch, which puts a element of foreground, middle ground, and background, and I think that is a very accurate photograph in terms of sharpness. And here we have another one. This is a family of tigers, and you see the beautifully lit tigers along with the reflection that illuminates around these beautiful branches and leaves, and that adds a beauty to it. And if you look at it, you'll find that it's something that has a quality of artistic expression. It's the way that a photograph if you were to imagine it in black and white, would be. And also it's a photograph that shows how the foreground is connects to the background, because the background is somewhat dimly lit, but the foreground, the middle ground, and the tigers adds this beautiful artistic element to the photograph. Now here I wanted to take this photograph of these Chinese lanterns, the front of a building, just to demonstrate how accurately and how beautiful this lens captures these colorations and these gradational tones. Notice how the lanterns in the foreground and the background are all in focus, and this is something that is very hard to attain. And also you will notice that I didn't shoot this at 0.95, I shot it at f4. We were still able to capture amazing images handheld, and one of the reasons is that this lens has got a very wide diameter opening, and it is able to suck in light, and of course the CCD type of sensor gave this beautiful tonal gradation between different parts of this photograph. And finally we have this other one that I want to talk about, is the head. And the head is very interesting because you'll see at close range how this lens was able to get in really close and capture a photograph that gives this element of beauty to it. You notice the nose of the animal has a different colorational tones than the eyes and the head, and you can see the texture and the cloth that this sculpture was constructed upon, and it's that beauty that adds this feeling of film to this photograph, and that's what I like about it. Notice in the background it's lit colorfully and lightly, gives this feeling that it's almost like a hair light, giving this head a chance to pop out of the image and create that three-dimensionality. And in the back, on the very top, you see the leaves and the tree branches. That adds also another element of beauty to this photograph. And I hope these images give you an idea of how this lens performs under less than ideal situations or low light situations. And I hope you subscribe to our website. We have our YouTube channel that has new videos out every week, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for watching.